The mafia boss was surrounded outside her diner until the single mom waitress walked out with a bat. The rain didn't just fall in Lake Haven, New Jersey. It attacked. It came down in hard, driving sheets that hammered the pavement and turned the twilight into a bruised purple smear. On the edge of the industrial district, the Blue Comet Diner was an island of light, its neon sign flickering, casting fractured blue and red reflections on the slick, truck-shined asphalt. Inside, Ella Perez, 28 years old and looking older, wiped down the Formica counter. Her movements were automatic, a rhythm worn smooth by exhaustion, with every swipe of the damp cloth. Her eyes scanned the street through the rain-lashed glass. She wasn't watching for customers. It was too late for that. She was watching the clock, watching the storm, willing the end of her double shift to arrive. In the small staff room behind the kitchen, her daughter, June, was asleep, 6 years old, curled on a cot made of 2 chairs pushed together, a box of crayons resting near her small hand. That image was the anchor that kept Ella from dissolving. Then they came. Not with sirens, but with the heavy, crushing silence of predators. A procession of black SUVs, windows tinted to opacity, slid through the rain and formed a perfect, menacing crescent around the diner's entrance. They killed their engines, and the sudden quiet was louder than the storm. Ella's breath hitched. Her hand tightened on the rag. A figure stepped out from the lead vehicle, flanked immediately by 2 others. A woman, tall and severe in a black leather coat that shed water like polished stone. She stood in the center of the semicircle, illuminated by the diner's sputtering sign, Valentina Val Korolenko. Even Ella, who kept her head down and her world small, knew that name. Val ran the Ardenti syndicate. Val was the docks. And she was surrounded. Men poured from the other SUVs. They didn't wear uniforms, but they moved with a disciplined, tactical aggression that was far more terrifying. The Novak crew. Ella had heard the whispers from the longshoremen who came in for coffee, talks of a shadow war for the port, of a hostile investment firm called Oxley Meridian, bankrolling Novak's play. They wanted the Delaware River shipping lanes. It looked like they planned to take them tonight. A glint of light, impossibly small and sharp, swept across the diner's facade, a laser sight. It painted a thin red line across the specials board before moving on. Ella dropped the rag. Her heart was a cold stone in her chest. She moved, not toward the back, but toward the kitchen line. Next to the aging pizza oven, leaning against the wall, was the bat. It was old. The paint cracked, the grip worn smooth. She used it to prop the oven door open when the hinge stuck. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. The weight was familiar. Solid. Her knuckles were white, but her eyes, reflected in the stainless steel of the pass-through, were cold. Outside, Val Korolenko was a study in lethal calm. She was a sword in its scabbard, radiating potential energy. She stood with her back to her 2 associates, protecting them. She gave a curt, almost invisible signal with her left hand. Her own escort team, caught by surprise, began to melt into the deep shadows of the alley running alongside the diner. It was a good plan, but useless. The alley's exit was blocked by another SUV. The trap was sprung. The rain intensified, turning from a downpour into a deluge. A metallic screech cut the air as a loudspeaker crackled to life from the enemy line. "Korolenko, you have 5 minutes. Give us the digital shipping ledger." The voice was amplified, robotic, devoid of emotion. 5 minutes or we burn the diner down with you inside it. The ledger. The mythical Athena ledger. Ella had thought it was just dock worker gossip. The threat galvanized her. Burn the diner. She ran to the staff room. June was still asleep, oblivious. One hand clutching a broken blue crayon. Ella's throat closed. She couldn't run. She couldn't hide. There was no back door they wouldn't cover. She looked at the heavy-duty metal supply locker where they kept the bulk flour and sugar. It was solid, with a thick latch. "June," she whispered, shaking her daughter awake. The girl's eyes fluttered open, confused and sleepy. "Baby, we're going to play a game, a quiet game. She lifted her daughter, all 6 years and 40 pounds of her, and placed her inside the locker. June's eyes widened. "I need you to count." "Honey," Ella said, her voice strained but steady. "Count to 1,000, nice and slow, and do not open this door until you get all the way to 1,000, no matter what. Do you understand me?" June, sensing the raw fear in her mother's voice, nodded, her lower lip trembling. 1, 2. Ella slid the heavy latch home, plunging her daughter into darkness. She walked back to the front. She gripped the bat. The trembling in her hand was gone, replaced by a white-hot stillness. She shoved the front door open. The hinges screamed. Every head in the parking lot snapped toward her. The rain hit her face, cold and sharp. She stepped onto the small concrete porch, the bat held low in one hand. Val Korolenko turned her head, her expression of bored disdain shifting to guarded confusion. She saw a waitress, 20-something, in a faded blue uniform and apron, holding a baseball bat like she meant to use it, a civilian, a liability. Ella ignored the guns. She ignored the mafia boss. She was on her porch. She lifted the bat and swung it, cracking it against the iron railing with a sound like a gunshot. 1. The Novak crewman flinched. She swung again. 2. "This is private property," she yelled, her voice breaking the tactical standoff. She swung a third time. 3. A sharp, rhythmic claim. "This area has an owner." For a full second, the only sound was the rain and the hum of the idling engines. The standoff was broken, contaminated by the one thing they hadn't planned for a nobody. A real gunshot barked, a warning. The bullet slammed into the neon sign above Ella's head. The comet exploded in a shower of blue sparks and glass, plunging the porch into near darkness. Ella didn't duck. She pointed the bat at the shooter. "This is my grill," she screamed, her voice cracking with a fury that stunned every man there. "Anyone fires again, you're washing your own blood off the pancake batter." As she spoke, a low buzz grew louder. A drone. It zipped from behind an SUV, its red camera light a malevolent eye, zeroing in on her and Val. Ella didn't hesitate. Her second swing was not a warning. It was pure, desperate instinct. She tracked the drone, planted her back foot on the wet concrete, and swung from the heels. The crack of splintering wood meeting plastic and metal was immensely satisfying. The drone exploded into pieces, its red light winking out. The chaos began. The destruction of the drone was the signal. The air cracked as the Novak crew opened fire, not with live rounds, but with the hard, dull thud of rubber bullets slamming into the diner's brickwork. A hand, strong as steel, grabbed the strap of Ella's apron and yanked her backward, pulling her off the exposed porch and hard against the wall. It was Val. She shoved Ella deep under the eaves, into a narrow blind spot where the remaining cameras couldn't see. The air was close, smelling of wet leather and ozone. Val's face was inches from hers, her eyes dark and dangerously calm in the fractured light. "I don't need a hero," Val whispered, her voice a low rasp that cut through the sound of the rain. "I need the wind. Which way does it blow?" Ella didn't look at her. She looked at the geography of her territory. She pointed the scarred tip of her bat toward the curb. "That drain pipe," Ella said, her voice tight. "It's been clogged for a week. The gutter floods the street at the south corner. It's deep. They'll slide if you push them south." Val processed the information instantly. A flicker of surprise, quickly masked, crossed her features. She raised 2 gloved fingers across the street. One of her associates, tucked in the alley, saw the signal. He moved to the curb, twisting the cap on a city fire hydrant. A pressurized torrent of water exploded into the street. It hit the flank of the Novak ambush team with the force of a car, turning the pavement into a slick, unpredictable river. Men shouted, stumbling as the cold water blasted them, blinding them. It was a brilliant, non-lethal counter, designed to scatter, not kill, and to keep the city police from responding to a gunfight. The enemy adapted. A high-pitched electronic whine cut through the air. In Ella's apron, her phone vibrated once, hard, and then died. The diner's credit card machine went dark. "Jammer," Val stated flatly. The signal was dead. Through the chaos, the Novak crew began to advance again, shielding their eyes. Several raised thermal optics to see through the sheet of water. They want to see heat, Ella said, understanding the new threat. She ducked back inside the diner's main door, Val moving with her, covering their entry. Ella didn't go for a weapon. She lunged for the kitchen line, grabbing the main valve for the grills and flat top. She twisted it hard. A heavy hiss filled the kitchen. "Get back," she ordered. She cracked the door open again. The pressurized propane, heavier than air, rolled out onto the porch like a dense, shimmering fog, mixing with the rain. Val saw the play. She reached inside her leather coat and produced a handheld road flare, striking the cap against its body. It ignited with a blinding, magnesium-white glare. She tossed it into the gas cloud. It didn't explode. The air-to-fuel mixture wasn't right for ignition. Instead, it created a wall of pure, scorching white heat, a thermal blizzard that completely whited out the enemy's advanced optics. The rubber bullets came again, fast and blind. A dark shape burst through the heat haze. Ella, acting on pure kitchen instinct, grabbed the heaviest cast-iron skillet from the rack and threw it low, like a discus. It slammed into the man's knee with a sickening crack of cartilage. Simultaneously, Val stepped forward. Her hand moved in a blur, a collapsible baton snapping open with a metallic shing. She deflected a rubber slug that had been aimed at Ella's head. They moved together for the first time. A strange, disjointed rhythm. Ella ducked, Val blocked. They breathed in the metallic scent of the rain and the sulfur of the flare, their bodies reacting to the threat with a synchronicity neither of them could have predicted. The standoff broke. One of the lead SUVs revved its engine, a sound like a dragon roaring in the storm. It leaped the curb, tires spinning on the wet grass, aiming straight for the porch. It was going to collapse the entrance. Ella didn't run away. She ran at it. She used the porch railing as a vault, planting a hand and swinging her body onto the wet, vibrating hood of the vehicle. The driver, stunned, stared at her through the windshield wipers. She slammed the butt of her bat against the safety glass. Once, twice, 3 times. The glass fractured. The driver flinched, shielding his face. Ella ignored him. She leaned over, ripped the wiring from his dash-mounted camera, and tore the small black box free, clutching it in her hand. The driver's door was ripped open. Val was there. She hauled the man out in a fluid motion of leverage and controlled violence. He hit the pavement hard before he could recover. Val had his hands bound behind him with a set of thick plastic cargo straps she'd plucked from an open crate by the diner's dumpster. Brakes squealed. New lights flooded the scene, not police blue and red, but piercing. Sterile white and amber strobes, 2 armored vans, matte gray and unmarked, rolled to a stop, blocking the street, caging everyone in. Ella squinted against the glare, making out the logo on the side. It wasn't Lake Haven PD. It was an unfamiliar, official-looking Crest River County Special Enforcement Task Group, Set G. Val spat on the ground next to the bound driver. "Mercenaries," she muttered, her voice laced with pure contempt. "Oxley's private army." The CTG units didn't move in. Their doors opened. But the men who emerged carried cameras, not rifles. They fanned out, filming everything, their lenses capturing Val, the bound man, the broken diner sign, and Ella, standing on the hood of the SUV. The trap wasn't the ambush. The trap was this. Oxley Meridian didn't just want the ledger. They wanted the narrative. They needed footage of Val Korolenko, the crime boss, causing a public disturbance, endangering civilians, destroying property. They needed the legal justification to have the Port Authority seize her contracts. Val saw the play. She crossed her arms, her face becoming an impassive mask. She refused to be baited. Ella, however, slid off the hood, her apron soaked and torn. She stepped into the center of the artificial light, lowering her bat. "What the hell is this?" she yelled, projecting the perfect image of a terrified, furious small business owner. "You broke my sign. My grill is off. Who is paying for this?" She was stalling, talking to the SETG operators, forcing them to interact with her, the civilian rather than Val, the target. She was loud, obnoxious, and buying precious seconds. As Ella gestured angrily at the broken neon, Val watched her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. In the harsh glare, Val saw the thick, pale calluses on her palms and at the base of her fingers. Not the calluses of a fighter. They were the calluses of someone who wielded spatulas, heavy pots, and hot pans for 12 hours a day. The hands of a worker. The tremor Val had seen earlier hadn't been fear. It had been exhaustion. A sudden, sharp spike of respect cut through Val's tactical assessment. The distant, mournful horn of the midnight freight train echoed across the water. The sound seemed to focus Val, reminding her of the stakes. She moved close to Ella's ear, shielding her mouth from the cameras. "If I lose tonight," Val whispered, the words barely audible over the rain. "They take the container loop for good. My people starve." Ella didn't pause in her tirade against the CTG, but she leaned back fractionally, her eyes fixed on the man with the camera. "Then we have to drag them into the light," she replied, just as quietly. "My light. My terms." The sun rose, but Lake Haven didn't seem to notice. The hard rain had given way to a miserable, gray drizzle that cloaked the damaged port town in a shroud of damp. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the Blue Comet Diner was technically open for business, but the flicker of the coffee machine's on light was the only welcoming sign. The front door chimed, admitting a blast of cold, wet air. 2 men in dark suits came first, followed by a woman in a severe, charcoal-gray trench coat. Her heels tapped the linoleum, a sharp, prosecuting sound that seemed to measure the room. She didn't look at Ella behind the counter. She looked at the space. Her gaze swept over the plywood boarding the broken window, the scorch mark near the door where the flare had burned, and the faint, lingering smell of propane. This was Special Agent Ava Rios, Metropolitan Organized Crime Directorate. In the back corner booth, Valentina Korolenko sipped a black coffee. She looked bored, another traveler stuck in the rain. Ella moved behind the counter, her apron clean, her hands steady as she refilled the sugar shakers. They had rehearsed this silence. They were strangers. Agent Rios slid onto a stool directly across from Ella. Coffee, black. Ella poured it. "You had a hell of a night, Miss Perez," Rios said, not looking at her, but at her own reflection in the mirror behind the counter. "We have multiple reports of a tactical engagement, property damage, discharge of a non-lethal arsenal, a destroyed drone." "The storm was bad," Ella said, wiping a clean spot on the counter. "Broke the sign." "The storm," Rios repeated. She tapped a fingernail against the ceramic mug. "You're Ella Perez, 28, single mother, 1 dependent, June Perez, age 6. Ella's hands, which had been so steady, stopped moving. "I pulled your file," Rios said, her voice dropping to a conversational, almost friendly tone. "You've got a heavy pile of medical debt, a child with chronic asthma. You receive supplemental state assistance for her care." Rios finally turned, her eyes locking on Ella's. "It's a tricky thing. State aid, it's contingent on providing a safe, stable, and lawful environment for the child. The courts don't look kindly on mothers who expose their children to volatility, to organized crime. It would be a tragedy if a woman lost custody of her child over a simple misunderstanding. The threat was surgical, aimed not at Ella, but at June. It was a clean shot, designed to sever Ella's spine. In the corner, Val's hand tightened around her mug, her knuckles turning white. She did not look up. Ella held the agent's gaze. "Are you going to order breakfast, agent, or just threaten my family?" Rios's thin smile wavered. Before she could answer, Val stood up, tossing a $5 bill on the table. She walked to the register, which Ella now manned. "Just the coffee," Val said, her voice flat. Ella rang it up. As Val took the change, she slid a small, folded guest receipt across the counter. Scrawled on the back was a phone number. "A pediatric pulmonologist in the city," Val said, her voice a murmur that only Ella could hear. The best, he doesn't take insurance, but he clears lungs, in case the damp air affects her. Ella looked at the number. It represented a world of breathing, of safety, of debt she could never repay. It was a lifeline, and it was a chain. She slid the receipt back to Val's side of the counter. I can't. Val held her gaze, but Ella's eyes conveyed what her words couldn't. Thank you, but not like this. Val nodded once, a sharp acknowledgement of the boundary, and pocketed the receipt. She left the diner, walking past Rios without a glance. The agent watched her go. You choose your company carefully. Miss Perez, some friends cost more than you have. After Rios and her MOCD team left, having found nothing tangible, the diner was heavy with the silence of their threats. But the street was talking. The rumors coming in with the morning dock workers were panicked. The Novak crew was desperate. They had tripled the bounty on the Athena ledger. It wasn't just a shipping list. Ella learned it was a proprietary logistics software, a ghost key that could reroute entire fleets, create phantom containers, and make millions in cargo disappear. And the Novak crew wasn't the only one looking. A quiet federal agency, the Interstate Financial Integrity Bureau, or IFIB, was rumored to be monitoring the software, hoping to see who tried to use it. Rios's threat had changed the game. Ella wasn't just tired, she was cornered. That afternoon, she went to check the diner's backdoor security camera, the one aimed at the dumpster. The memory card was gone, swapped. She knelt in the mud by the trash, her eyes scanning the ground, boot prints, deep tread tactical boots, smeared with a specific dark industrial grease. She followed the trail. It led down the alley and toward the derelict piers. There, on the side of a rusted bulkhead, she found it, a small symbol drawn in blue chalk, nearly washed away by the rain, a triangle with a slash, a Novak drop signal. She took a clear photo with her phone. That evening, Val returned. The closed sign was on, the diner empty. They swapped your camera, Val stated. I know. Novak, Ella said, pulling out her phone and showing her the picture of the chalk mark. Val studied the photo. They think I passed Athena to you during the chaos. They think you're my new civilian cutout. Am I? Val gave a small, appreciative huff. Oxley Meridian is moving its dirty money tonight. They use a guerrilla finance crew to handle the physical transfers. They intimidate local businesses, force them to wash the cash. I'm hitting that crew. I need a new face, someone they won't recognize. She slid a thick, cream-colored envelope onto the counter. I need you to work a different kind of night shift. It pays triple your best ever week. Cash. It was a bait job. Ella would be the bait. Ella stared at the envelope. Triple pay. That was June's specialist co-pays for 6 months. It was the name brand inhalers that didn't fail. It was the difference between breathing easy and the frantic, wheezing terror in the middle of the night. But it was a line, hard and bright. I need an hour, she said. In the staff room, June's crayon drawings taped to the wall, Ella dialed a number she hadn't called in years. Mags, it's Ella Perez. Mags Leto, her old high school softball coach, a woman who later worked as a forensic consultant before retiring. Perez, you sound like you're in a hole. Ella didn't give details. She just described the crossroads, a high-risk, high-reward choice, a moral compromise for her daughter's health. Mags was quiet on the other end. Remember your swing, kid, she finally grunted. What? Your swing. You always overthought it. You'd get in your head, chop at the ball. What did I always tell you? The fundamentals. Step to the plate. Pivot your hips. Look the pitcher right in the eye. Step, pivot. Look, that's the whole game. The rest is just noise. A slow smile spread across Ella's face. The tension in her shoulders eased. Step. Pivot. Look. A rhythm for a new life. She hung up and walked back out. Val was waiting. Ella pushed the envelope back toward her. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Val raised an eyebrow. 1, no children, anywhere near this. Not mine, not anyone's. They are off the board. Agreed, Val said without hesitation. 2 no drugs, no poison. I'm not a mule. It's cash, not product. 3, Ella said, her voice hard as the diner's counter. No bystanders, no innocent collateral. If a civilian gets in the way, we pull them out. We don't push them down. Val studied the waitress, the mother, the woman who had stared down a federal agent and a team of mercenaries. A small, genuine smile touched the corner of her mouth. My rules, too, Val said. Welcome to the night shift. The target was the Oxley Meridian Waterfront Gala, a transparent attempt to buy public goodwill. Tents were set up on the pier, a stage erected for a local politician, and catering tables groaned with shrimp and cheap champagne. All of it was a cover for the night's real business, a high-level data transfer. The plan was simple, which meant it was destined to fail. Ella, wearing a borrowed utility vest and a non-existent stage crew laminate, was on the ground. Her job was to get inside the mobile IT tent and swap a decoy hard drive for the one containing the Athena ledger. Above her, moving like shadows among the rooftop air conditioning units, was Val's team. Rook, Sarah, and Finch. Val herself was perched on a gantry overlooking the main pier. Their communication was a closed, encrypted mesh network, the transmitters disguised as cheap disposable lighters. Ella, at the central hub, had a single earpiece. The comms feed a quiet click in her ear. Ground team, I have eyes on the IT tent, Ella murmured, her voice picked up by a mic hidden in the laminate's clip. 2 guards, sloppy. Wait, Val's voice, clipped and cool, came back. Movement, west perimeter. Ella flattened herself against a stack of speaker crates. The white and amber strobes of the River County Special Enforcement Task Group cut through the night. The same 2 armored vans from the diner rolled onto the pier. They're blocking the exits, Sirah reported from the roof. They're not checking in with local PD. They just neutralized the Port Authority security guards, zip-tied them. A cold understanding settled in Val's gut. Agent Rios and her MOCD unit were nowhere to be seen. This was an off-books operation. MOCD didn't control CTG, which meant someone with deeper pockets was pulling their strings. Oxley was bringing in its own private police to secure its own dirty work. Ella, the window just closed. Val said, This is a lockdown. The guards just left the tent, Ella whispered back, her heart hammering. They're talking to the SETG lead. It's my only chance. Go. 30 seconds. Ella moved. She slipped through the tent's flap, her sneakers silent on the temporary flooring. The tent was a nest of humming servers and blinking lights. The primary rack was labeled. The drive was right there. Her hands moved with a cook's efficiency. Disconnect, slide, replace with the decoy, reconnect. It took 12 seconds, but she paused. A second monitor, left active, showed a list of transaction manifests. She scanned the dates. A cold dread, sharper than fear, prickled her skin. The timestamps of Oxley's largest offshore transfers perfectly matched the arrival schedule of the S. Hope, a hurricane relief vessel that had docked 2 weeks prior. They weren't just securing a shipping lane. They were laundering money through disaster aid. Ground team, status, Val's voice snapped in her ear. I'm compromised, Finch's voice, so tight with pain. Novak team, they're here. They're early. I'm pinned. East scaffold. Ella's blood ran cold. She looked out the tent flap. A new group of men. These ones in dark street clothes was moving rapidly toward the stage, their movements hard and predatory. Luka Vacek, Novak's chief enforcer, was at their head. This wasn't a heist anymore. It was a 3-way collision. Ella looked at the soundboard set up near the IT tent. The crowd of Oxley's guests was milling near the stage, directly in Finch's line of retreat. Finch, stay down, Ella ordered, stepping to the soundboard. Ella, what are you doing? Val hissed. Get out of there. Creating a diversion. Ella's fingers flew across the control panel, finding the master audio input. She selected the preloaded emergency track and slammed the master volume fader to maximum. A deafening, whooping siren, followed by a synthesized voice, blasted across the waterfront. "Severe weather alert. This is not a drill. Evacuate the pier. Severe gale and storm surge imminent." The crowd panicked. Champagne glasses shattered. People screamed and ran, a surge of bodies rushing away from the stage, creating the perfect cover. "Finch, go!" Ella yelled into the mic. Moving. "Sarah, Rook, cover his exit," Val commanded. "I'll handle Vacek." Val dropped from her perch, landing with a soundless roll on the main steel gantry that ran above the stage. Luka Vacek, seeing her, grinned and bounded up the gantry's ladder to meet her. The fight was brutal and fast. Vacek wielded 2 short, curved knives. Val used her collapsible baton. It was a flurry of dark metal in the flashing emergency lights. He slashed. She parried. The sound of metal on metal was a sharp tink, tink, tink over the fading screams of the crowd. Vacek was faster, but Val was smarter. She used the gantry's angles, forcing him into bottlenecks. He lunged, and she twisted. But the tip of his blade caught her, slicing through her coat and the flesh of her shoulder, a sharp, burning pain. Below, Ella watched it happen. She was holding the real Athena drive, her knuckles white. She saw Vacek press his advantage, forcing Val back toward a short maintenance ladder. Ella ran to the base of the gantry, her eyes scanning the massive lighting rig it supported. She saw the strut, a heavy steel pin holding a crossbeam in place. As Vacek placed his foot on the ladder's top rung, Ella jammed her bat into the strut's locking mechanism and threw her entire body weight against it. The pin snapped. The crossbeam shifted with a groan of tortured metal. The ladder rung under Vacek's boot buckled, breaking free from its weld. He fell. He dropped a dozen feet, hitting a canvas supply tarp below with a heavy, airless whump. Val didn't pause. She vaulted over the railing, catching her dropped baton in midair, and landed lightly on the tarp. She brought the steel baton down once, precisely on Vacek's collarbone, and the fight was over. Ella was already moving, melting back into the shadows. The real drive was clutched in her hand. She made it back to the diner in 12 minutes, her chest aching. She walked straight to the pancake station, popped the lid on a 1-gallon tin of maple syrup, and dropped the sealed hard drive inside. The glug as it sank was the only sound in the empty diner. It was the one place, she figured, no one would ever look hard enough. Val and her team slid in the back door 2 minutes later, Val's face pale, her hand clamped to her bleeding shoulder. Before Ella could even reach for the first aid kit, the front door chimed. Agent Ava Rios stood in the entrance. She wasn't in her MOCD suit. She was flanked by 2 new men in dark federal-issue windbreakers. The letters on their backs were stark white IFIB. Rios looked at Ella, then at Val, her eyes piecing together the impossible alliance. "Well," Rios said, her voice heavy with a new, unwelcome authority, "you two have certainly been busy. You just touched something that's been giving Washington insomnia for a year." Val said nothing, her face a mask of cold calculation. Ella felt the floor drop out from under her. She could feel the vibration of 3 separate, interlocking traps, Novak, Oxley, and now the feds. "I'm a cook," Ella said, her voice a thin, reedy thing she barely recognized. "I just clean up messes." But her hand, resting on the counter, was shaking violently. The chiming of the door as Agent Rios and her federal shadows departed was unnaturally loud in the exhausted quiet. They left a vacuum in their wake, filled with the smell of wet wool and the metallic tang of new threats. The diner was a wreck, but it was their wreck. The adrenaline of the heist, the confrontation with Vacek, and the sudden paralyzing appearance of the IFIB had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, deep ache. Val was leaning heavily against the counter, her face a pale, strained mask in the yellow light of the kitchen pass-through. Her black coat was stiff with drying rain. She fumbled with the zipper, her left hand clamped high on her right shoulder, where Luka Vacek's knife had found her. Blood, dark and slow, seeped between her fingers. She pulled a field dressing from an inner pocket, her movements stiff and uncoordinated. She couldn't get the plastic wrapper open with one hand. A low, frustrated sound, almost a growl, escaped her. Ella watched for a count of 2. "You're getting blood on the prep station." She went into the back room, past a still, sleeping June, and retrieved the industrial first aid kit from under the sink, the one stocked with more than just cartoon bandages. She returned, snapping on a pair of latex gloves. "Sit," Ella commanded, pointing to a stool. Val looked up, her eyes sharp with defiance. "Sit, or I'll charge you for the cleanup." Val hesitated, then slid onto the stool, her body moving with a rigid reluctance. She let her hand fall away from the wound. It was a clean slice, but deep, bleeding sluggishly. Ella clicked on the small light above the coffee machine and began to clean the wound with an antiseptic wipe. Val hissed, her entire body tensing at the sting. "Hold still," Ella murmured. The rain tapped gently on the tin roof, a soft drumbeat against the silence in the diner. "Why?" Ella asked, her voice low, her hands busy with gauze and tape. "The docs, all this. Why?" Val stared straight ahead at the rows of overturned coffee mugs. "I was brought to this country in a shipping container," she said, her voice flat, devoid of self-pity. "I was 12. I grew up in the Lake Haven shipyards. I learned how to weld, how to load, how to fight." She paused, as if weighing her next words. "Novak isn't just about cargo and dirty money. They're in the old business, the one I came here in. They move people. Girls, mostly. They use the routes I protected." Ella's hands stilled for a second. "I chose the lesser evil. Miss Perez, I keep the unions strong, I keep the cargo moving, and I keep them out of my port." She finally looked at Ella. "That's why." Ella finished taping the bandage. The white gauze was stark against Val's dark shirt. "I'll make some hot cocoa," she said, stripping off the gloves. She moved to the grill, her actions automatic, measuring milk and cocoa powder into a small saucepan. Val watched her, a silent, assessing gaze. "And you," Val asked, "the bat, the drone, tonight on the pier. You weren't just protecting a grill. You weren't just in it for the cash." Ella didn't turn around. She stirred the milk, watching it heat. "June had an attack last winter, a bad one. The flu. It settled in her lungs. She went blue. I sat in the emergency room for 8 hours, listening to her trying to breathe, begging." She poured the steaming cocoa into 2 heavy mugs. "The bill was $11,000. After insurance, it bankrupted me. It's the reason I work doubles. It's the reason I live in that back room." She placed a mug in front of Val. "I hate owing people. I hate being helpless, just waiting for someone to save me or for a bill to kill me. When I saw you, surrounded, when I saw that laser, it was the same feeling, like being trapped in that hospital corridor, grabbing the bat. That was just me deciding I was done being helpless." They drank in silence. The hot, sweet liquid was a comfort, a small island of domesticity in the chaos of their lives. Val was breathing. Ella noticed it, a quiet, measured rhythm, in, hold, out. "You're counting," Ella said, recognizing the pattern. Val nodded, not looking up from her mug. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. It slows the heart, keeps the hands steady." A small, tired smile touched Ella's lips. "I count 2. When June is wheezing, when the collection agency calls, I count to 3, over and over. 1, 2, 3. As long as I can get to 3, I can take the next step." They looked at each other, the boss, the waitress, 2 women who managed their terror by breaking it down into numbers. The moment was broken by the sharp buzz of a phone on the counter. It was Ella's, a text from an unknown number. She picked it up. "This is Rios. The IFIB is off the reservation. They're running their own play. They want Athena. They're willing to offer you full immunity and relocation in exchange for the drive. Think about your daughter." Ella's blood went cold. Immunity. They saw her as a player, not a victim. She slid the phone across the counter for Val to read. Val read the message twice. "Trusting anyone is a gamble," she said, her voice hard. "Trusting a Fed who's breaking rules is just suicide." "It's an out, Val, for me in June." "Is it?" Val countered. "Or is it a different cage?" Val reached into her pocket, ignoring the pull on her fresh bandage, and placed a single, heavy, old-fashioned brass key on the counter. "That's the key to the diner's original floor safe. It's under the mat in the pantry. There's about $20,000 in it. My emergency fund." She pushed the key toward Ella. "If I go down," Val said, her voice low and absolute, "if Rios or Novak or anyone else takes me off the board, you take that key. You take the money and you run. You take June and you don't look back." Ella stared at the key. It was the answer to her medical bills, her escape. Val leaned in. "And if you fall, if they come for you, if they try to use you to get to me, if they ever try to touch your daughter." Val's eyes were black ice. "I will carry June and I will run, and God help anyone who follows." It was the most profound promise Ella had ever heard. It wasn't an offer of protection. It was a pledge of succession. Ella didn't take the key. She covered Val's hand with her own. Val's skin was cold. Ella's was warm. They stayed like that, a silent contract sealed on the formica. The pilot light of the flat-top grill, the only fire left, cast a small, warm glow on their faces. Headlights swept the diner as a late-night truck rumbled past on the highway. They pulled their hands apart, but the air between them was charged, a current that hadn't been there before. The danger was still present, but the fear had changed. "I'm going to teach her," Ella said, her voice firm. "Tomorrow, how to use the mini nebulizer, all by herself. She needs to know how to save herself." "Good," Val said. She stood up, wincing. "I'm having an industrial-grade air purifier installed in the back room tomorrow. Medical filter. It'll keep the damp out of her lungs." Ella nodded. "Thank you." They both understood. This was no longer an alliance of convenience. Their fates were intertwined, hooked together by a shared threat, and now, by a shared choice. The diner was deep in the small hours, that pocket of time after the bars close and before the bakers wake up. The neon sign was off, its buzzing finally silent, plunging the front of the house into deep shadow. The only light came from the single buttery yellow bulb over the kitchen's prep station, a small, warm circle in the gloom. The only sounds were the steady, metallic tick of the wall clock and the soft, persistent patter of rain on the tin roof. June was fast asleep in the back, the low hum of her new air purifier a comforting presence. Val sat at the counter, her empty cocoa mug between her hands. She hadn't left, and Ella hadn't asked her to. The adrenaline of the night had long since drained away, leaving a profound, shared exhaustion in its place. Finally, Val moved, her shoulders stiff with pain. She reached up to shrug off the heavy leather coat, which was still damp and cold from the pier. She winced, a sharp, involuntary intake of breath, as the movement pulled at her injured shoulder. The white bandage Ella had applied hours ago was still clean, but the heavy, wet coat was clearly aggravating the wound. Ella, who had been wiping down the stainless steel coffee machine, stopped. "That needs to be checked," she said. It was not a question. Val started to protest. "It's fine." "It's not. The coat is rubbing it raw." Ella dried her hands on her apron, retrieved the first aid kit from under the counter, and set it on the steel surface with a solid thump. "Coat off, all the way." Val's gaze flickered, a momentary lapse in her armor. In this small, warm kitchen, her authority seemed to have no purchase. She stood, slowly, and slid the coat off her uninjured arm first, then, with a controlled, rigid movement, eased it off the bandaged one. In just her dark, simple shirt, she looked less like a syndicate boss and more like a woman who was bone-tired and in pain. "Turn around," Ella instructed, her voice soft but firm. Val obeyed, turning her back to Ella in the center of the kitchen. Ella's hands were slow and almost agonizingly gentle as she peeled the medical tape back. The skin around the slice was red and inflamed. Val's entire body was rigid, a compressed spring anticipating the sting. "You're too tense," Ella murmured. "You're going to tear the stitches I should have put in." She soaked a fresh piece of gauze in antiseptic. "This will sting." She pressed the cool, wet gauze to the wound. Val's breath hitched, a sharp, choked-off gasp, her shoulders locked, her hands balling into fists at her sides. "Breathe," Ella ordered softly, her voice close to Val's ear. "It helps if you blow on it." She leaned closer, her own breath stirring the fine hairs at the back of Val's neck, and blew a soft, cool stream of air across the hot skin. Val's head dipped, her eyes squeezed shut. A small, ragged sound escaped her throat. "That's your scientific cure, is it?" she whispered, her voice rough. "It's the mom cure," Ella replied, her voice just as quiet. "It works." She worked in silence, applying a fresh bandage, her touch professional but undeniably tender. They were so close. The kitchen, which usually felt large and empty at this hour, seemed to shrink to the small circumference of light they stood in. Ella could feel the heat radiating from Val's back, and she could smell the rain on her skin, mixed with the faint, metallic scent of antiseptic. When she was done, her hands lingered, resting flat on Val's shoulders. She didn't step away. "It's over," Ella whispered. "You can let go." Ella stepped around to face her. Val's eyes were dark, unguarded in a way that felt more intimate than the fight. The diner was so quiet that Ella was sure she could hear the sound of Val swallowing, a dry, difficult motion. Acting on an impulse that felt both foreign and completely natural, Ella raised her hand and placed it flat on Val's chest, just below her collarbone. It was the gesture of a nurse, checking for a fever, checking for life. "Your heart is racing," she diagnosed. Val's hand came up and covered Ella's, trapping it against her chest. Her grip wasn't rough, but it was absolute. She held Ella's hand there, pressing it harder, forcing Ella to feel the frantic, heavy beat. "It hasn't slowed down," Val said, her voice a low vibration that Ella felt through her palm. "Not since you walked out that door with the bat." She looked at Ella, her gaze stripped of all artifice, all command. "I have been cold for a very long time, Ella." Ella understood. It wasn't the rain. It wasn't the night air. It was a cold that came from the inside, a cold she recognized. She answered with a single, slow nod. She didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she leaned in. It was Val who closed the final inch. The embrace was tentative at first, then almost desperate. Ella's arms slid around Val's waist, her hand still pressed between her shoulders. Val's arms encircled her, one hand finding the small of her back, the other rising to cup the back of her head, her fingers tangling in Ella's hair. The kiss was soft, exploratory, a question. It was the taste of cocoa and rain and sheer exhaustion. It was nothing like the high-stakes adrenaline of the fight. This was slow and deep and real. Val kissed her with a contained, reverent hunger, and Ella, who had not been touched with kindness in years, felt a lifetime of defenses dissolve. Her hand moved from Val's back, up to her neck, her thumb brushing the line of her jaw. The constant warmth from the pilot light of the grill, which was never allowed to go out, seemed to wrap around them. The smell of old coffee and the faint, sweet scent of vanilla from the morning's pancake batter clung to the air. Outside, the rain drummed its steady rhythm on the roof, a backbeat to the sound of their breathing, which was no longer quite steady. The kiss deepened. Val's grip tightened, pulling Ella flush against her, and Ella could feel the hard lines of her body, the strength held in reserve. The heat was immediate, a sudden, rising pressure. It was the spark they had both been ignoring, the energy that had crackled between them in the heat-blasted air on the diner porch. It was exactly what Ella wanted, and it was exactly what she knew she could not have. Not like this, with a strength that cost her. Ella was the first to pull back. She did not break the embrace, but she eased the pressure. ending the kiss. She rested her forehead against Val's, their breath mingling. Val's eyes were closed, her expression pained. "I want this," Ella whispered, her voice shaking, confirming the desire Val could feel radiating from her. "But I need this to be real. I need it to be a choice, not adrenaline, not the fallout from a fight." Val opened her eyes. The raw need was still there, but it was banked, controlled. She understood. She respected the boundary, which only made Ella want her more. "Tomorrow," Val promised, her voice rough. Her thumb brushed Ella's cheekbone. "And the day after that." She unwound her arms from Ella and reached for her own coat, but she did not put it on. Instead, she draped the heavy, cold leather over Ella's shoulders. It was absurdly large, smelling of rain and Val, and it felt like the safest thing Ella had ever worn. A shield. Ella slid her arms into the sleeves, pulling it tight. Val motioned to the counter. They sat, side by side, on the vinyl stools, looking out into the dark, empty diner. After a moment, Val's hand found Ella's on the counter. She did not grab it. She just placed her palm against Ella's, a simple, warm contact. Ella turned her hand over and laced her fingers through Val's. They sat in the quiet, the clock ticking, the rain falling. It was not the hasty, desperate coupling of survivors. It was the first quiet decision of partners. A foundation, built not on the rush of a fight, but on the solid ground of mutual respect. The fragile peace of the previous night was shattered by the harsh light of morning. The new air purifier in the back room hummed, a small promise of safety, but the world outside was already closing in. Ava Rios met Ella not at the diner, but on a wind-swept public boardwalk 2 miles away. She slid a thick manila envelope across the picnic table. "You wanted to fight them in the light," Rios said, her voice bitter. "Here's the light." The documents inside were damning. Internal memos from Oxley Meridian, requisition orders for the River County Special Enforcement Task Group. They were using SETG to manufacture public order incidents like the diner attack to document a pattern of instability at the port. It was a corporate-backed coup designed to trigger a morality clause in the city contract, allowing Oxley to seize control of the shipping lanes. "They just need one more event," Rios said, "and they need Athena to finalize their hostile takeover of the digital logistics. Give me the drive. Ella, I can burn them all." "I don't have it," Ella lied. "Then they'll come for it, and they'll send someone who knows you." Rios left. Ella walked back to the diner, the help from the law feeling like another layer of the trap. She spent an hour reviewing the diner's security footage from before the attack, not the back alley camera, but the one covering the parking lot. She watched the footage from the day the memory card in the back was swapped. A man in a CDG contractor's uniform had done it. He moved with a familiar, confident swagger. He turned to look at a passing truck, and the sun hit his face. Ella's stomach turned to ice. Sean Dwyer, her ex-husband, June's father. A man who hadn't paid a dime in child support in 3 years, but always showed up to talk about protecting Lake Haven. Her phone rang, a private number. It was him. "You're in over your head, Elle." Sean's voice was a slick, false, friendly drawl. "I saw you on the pier last night. You're swimming with sharks." "What do you want?" "Sean, I'm with SCTG. We're cleaning up this town. I know you're holding something for Korolenko. That ledger, give it to me. I'm building a case against her. You planted a camera at my diner. To protect you, to protect June. Which brings me to my point." The fake sympathy vanished. "I ran a check. You're about to be sued for, what is it, $11,000 in outstanding medical bills. They'll garnish your wages. Take the diner. It's an unstable environment." He let the threat hang. "Give me the drive. I'll make the debt disappear. I'll file a good word about your custody situation. But if you don't, I have to do what's right for my daughter. I'll have to petition the court, and I'll win." Ella hung up, her hand shaking so badly she dropped the phone. She told Val's face, which had been so open the night before, closed like a steel door. His name, Sean Dwyer, "I'll handle him," Val said, her voice dropping to a flat, lethal tone. "Dockside law. He'll be on a barge to nowhere by midnight." "No." Ella's voice was sharp. "No, that's his game. That's how I lose. If you make him disappear, I become an unfit mother tied to a murder. He'll win, even from the bottom of the river." She tapped the documents from Rios. "We do this my way, with evidence, in the light." The trap was set for high noon during the annual Lake Haven waterfront Chowder Fest. The pier was crowded with families and tourists, the perfect cover. Ella, wearing a wire for Ava Rios' IFIB team, would meet Sean in front of the Blue Comet. She would give him the decoy, the gallon tin of maple syrup. Val's team. Rook and Sarah were on the roof across the street with long lens cameras. Val was in the alley. Ava and her team were in a surveillance van a block away. "He's here," Ella murmured, seeing Sean's gray CTG truck pull up. But something was wrong. Another set of black SUVs screeched around the corner. Novak's crew. They were early. "Trap is blown," Ava's voice yelled in Ella's earpiece, followed by a blast of static. "They're jamming us. We're blind. Pull out. Ella, pull." The line went dead. Luka Vashek and 3 of his men burst from the SUVs, heading not for Ella, but for the IFIB van. It was a counter-ambush. Ava's team was pinned. Val and Ella were alone. Sean Dwyer got out of his truck. He was in his full SEG tactical uniform, a holstered weapon on his hip. He carried a clipboard. "Ella," he said, smiling, the picture of official concern. "Got your message. I'm glad you're being smart." Ella's mind raced. She looked at the families eating chowder just 50 yards away. She looked at her diner. She reached inside the door and flipped a switch on the diner's old PA system, the one she used to announce orders. The microphone on the counter was now live, broadcasting to the 2 large speakers mounted under the eaves. The festival crowd could hear every word. "What is this?" "Sean," Ella said, her voice booming unnaturally loud across the waterfront. The crowd quieted, turning to look. Sean flinched, confused by the volume. "What are you doing? I'm here on official business." He held up the clipboard. "This is a warrant, authorized seizure of assets related to the Korolenko investigation. Just give me the ledger." "You mean the drive you want to sell to Oxley?" Ella boomed. "Ella, stop this," he hissed, his eyes darting to the curious crowd. "Or what you'll threaten to take my daughter again." The crowd murmured. People started raising their phones, filming. A shadow emerged from the alley. Val. She was unarmed, her hands empty at her sides. She just stood there, next to Ella, staring at Sean. Sean panicked. He saw his leverage, his payday, his entire plan evaporating in the public light. He fumbled at his belt, but he didn't pull his firearm. He pulled his taser. "Back off, Korolenko," he shouted, aiming the yellow device at Val's chest. "You're interfering with a federal contractor." Ella stepped directly in front of Val. Her hand was wrapped around the familiar, cracked grip of her baseball bat. "Get out of the way, Elle. Don't be stupid." "Mommy!" The small voice from inside the diner cut through the standoff like a knife. June was at the staff room door, her face pale. She let out a dry, wheezing cough. Ella's focus fractured. She wanted to run to her daughter, but she couldn't move. "It's okay, baby," she called out, her voice tight with strain. "Stay inside, count to 100. Sean's eyes lit up, seeing his true leverage. See Ella unsafe, a taser standoff. What kind of mother? He never finished. While his eyes were on Ella, Val had moved. She wasn't attacking. She had slipped silently to the side door, cracked it open, and reached into the medical cabinet. June's hand appeared in the crack. Val pressed the mini nebulizer into it. The door clicked shut. Sean had missed it. He was focused on the syrup can on the outdoor counter. "Give it to me. Ella, now." He lunged, not at her, but at the can. He grabbed the heavy tin, clutching it to his chest like a football. "You're done, Korolenko," he yelled, backing away. "It's over." He scrambled into his truck and tore off, tires squealing. Ella started to move, but Val put a hand on her arm. "Let him run!" "He has it." "He has maple syrup," Val said, her voice a low, cold hum of victory. "And a high-frequency tracker stuck to the bottom. The game just changed. Now, we don't have to find them. He's going to lead us right to the top." The tracker blinked, a steady red pulse on Ella's phone. It was moving fast, away from the diner, toward the abandoned industrial shoreline. The small, waterproof pinger Val had stuck to the bottom of the syrup tin was leading them straight into the heart of the storm. The wind didn't just howl, it screamed, peeling sheets of rain from the sky and slamming them against the windshield of Val's sedan. "Warehouse 17, Val said, her voice tight, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "The old coal pier, neutral ground." "Neutral for who?" Ella asked, the tablet controller for the drone heavy on her lap. "For them to cut a deal." The warehouse was a massive, rusted steel box perched at the end of the collapsing pier, silhouetted against the churning, white-capped river. Sean's SETG truck was parked near a loading bay, flanked by the dark, smoked glass menace of Luka Vacek's SUVs and a single, obscene, polished black limousine, Oxley Meridian. Val killed the engine and the lights a quarter-mile out, plunging them into the roaring darkness. "Here's the play," Val said, her voice a low hum against the wind. "Sean is inside, presenting his evidence. That's the syrup tin. Novak is the muscle. The Oxley lawyer is the brains. They are meeting to finalize the story, to create a legal framework to frame me for the diner attack and the pier fight. They're making me the public menace, and Sean is their star witness." She handed Ella a small, encrypted earpiece. "You're the eyes. The drone is in the trunk. It has thermal optics. The storm is our cover. It will ground any of their high-altitude surveillance. But you can fly low, under the wind shear. The feed is patched." "Patched where?" "To the Blue Comet. I had Rook rig the new bulletin board TV. It's connected to a private live stream. Right now, it's just showing a static weather map. When you go live, the whole town will be able to see it." "The diner is closed. Val, who's going to see it?" "Rook is encouraging the local forums to tune in. He told them the Port Authority is making an emergency announcement about the storm. They'll be watching." Val checked her own gear, a set of slim audio receivers and several coin-sized magnetic microphones. "I'm going in low through the drainage moss. I'll plant ears." "Val, your shoulder is fine." Her face was granite. "You stay in the car. You lock the doors. You are the eye in the sky. Do not move." Val slipped out of the car and vanished into the rain, a shadow swallowed by shadows. Ella launched the drone. The small quadcopter fought the wind, its motors whining. She switched to the thermal feed. The warehouse lit up, a bright, hot box in the cold, blue dark. As she watched, the main power grid for the pier flickered and died, a transformer exploding in a flash of blue light. A second later, a massive new heat signature bloomed on the warehouse roof, the backup generator. "The generator's on," Ella whispered into her comms. "It's loud, it's masking your heat. Val, but it must be deafening in there." A single click came back in her ear. "Yes, I'm in." Ella guided the drone to a high, cracked window. The thermal view was clear. 10, 11 figures. She saw Sean at a table, gesturing proudly to the maple syrup tin. She saw Luka Vacek, his arm in a sling from the gantry fall. She saw a man in a perfectly tailored suit, his back to the window, radiating heat and authority. Val's voice crackled, patched through a button mic she'd planted. "Can't get closer to the table, but I have audio, and I'm picking up another signal. It's Agent Rios. She's on a call." The feed in Ella's ear switched. It was Ava Rios, her voice frantic, desperate. "Don't care about the market. They are laundering money through disaster relief, the SS, hope. I have the manifests." A cold, clipped, bureaucratic voice responded, "Agent Rios, your mandate from the IFIB is to stabilize, not to disrupt. You will stand down. Let Oxley handle the local matter. We cannot risk a market panic on this." "So you're just letting them win?" Ava's voice was incredulous. We are containing the problem. Do not engage. That is a direct order from Washington. There was a second of silence, then a click. Ava's voice returned, quieter. On a different channel, "This is Rios. Screw the order. I'm sending the entire file to the Lake Haven Gazette. Right now. Let them see what the IFIB is containing." Back in the warehouse, Sean was making his speech. Val's mic picked him up clearly. "And this is the key," Sean said, sliding a document across the table. "Korolenko's forged authorization for the transfers. This proves she was using the port for her own dirty work. It's all we need." "He's lying," Val whispered to Ella. "He's using a fake." "Ella," Val commanded, her voice urgent. "The documents Rios gave you, the real CTG requisitions, the ones Sean signed, authorizing the diner attack. Do you have them?" "On the tablet, right here." "He's framing me with fake paper. It's time to frame him back with real paper. Go live. Now." Ella's fingers flew. She switched the drone's feed from the thermal view to her tablet's screen. She hit the broadcast button. Back at the Blue Comet, Mags Leto, who had opened for the storm, looked up. The half-dozen fishermen and dock workers who had come in for shelter turned. The weather map vanished, replaced by a high-definition scan of a CTG contract, a contract for public order enforcement, authorizing the use of tactical gear at the Blue Comet Diner. At the bottom, a clear, arrogant signature, Sean Dwyer. Phones came out. The link to the stream was shared. "He's at warehouse, 17 inches, someone posted. He's selling us out." The town, simmering with betrayal, began to move. A small convoy of pickup trucks and fishing vans, headlights cutting through the storm, started rolling toward the old coal pier. The warehouse doors rattled. The suited lawyer looked up, annoyed. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing not police, but 50, 60 angry locals, their faces grim, their phones held high, recording. Novak's men raised their weapons. The CTG contractors formed a shield wall, but they couldn't fire on a crowd of their own neighbors. A new figure stepped out of the drainage ditch, covered in mud and grime. Val Korolenko. She walked into the center of the warehouse, into the harsh light of the generator lamps. "He's lying!" Val's voice cut through the stalemate. "Oxley isn't saving this port. They're robbing it." She pulled a mud-stained paper from her pocket. "The relief ship, the SS, Hope. They swapped the antibiotics in container 774B for cash and left the medicine to rot on the docks." The crowd roared. "Prove it," the lawyer screamed, his composure cracking. "Ella," Val said, her voice a calm command. "Now." Back in the car, Ella's fingers moved again. She remotely accessed the diner's floor safe, activating the real Athena ledger. Using a secure shortwave burst, she sent one single, devastating file to the public stream. The documents on everyone's phone vanished. They were replaced by a simple, brutal flowchart. It showed the money leaving Oxley, moving through the disaster relief fund and ending up in an offshore account. The money laundering in real time. Oxley Meridian was exposed. The lawyer's face went white. Luka Vacek, cornered and seeing the exits blocked by the crowd, saw only one play. He lunged, not at Val, not at the crowd. He lunged for the car, for the civilian, for the weak point he assumed was there. His hand closed on the handle of the passenger door. He ripped it open. The seat was empty. Luca's eyes widened in confusion. Where was the child? Ella's voice, amplified by the drone's loudspeaker, boomed over the storm. "She's not here! Luca!" The crowd turned, looking up at the small, whining drone. Val had never planned on bringing June, before they'd ever left the diner. Val had driven June and Mags herself to the fire department's storm aid station on the other side of town. June was safe, dry and watching cartoons. The child was never a pawn. Sean Dwyer saw it all unravel. He saw the crowd, the data on their phones. He saw the Oxley lawyer shake his head, a single sharp gesture. "You're cut loose." Sean grabbed his phone, frantically dialing his SETG handler. "I'm compromised. I need extraction. Warehouse 17 inches." He listened, his face crumbling. "What do you mean? Who is this?" The line went dead. He was abandoned. He turned, his eyes wild, and saw the person he blamed. He saw Ella, walking from the car, the drone controller in her hand. He raised his sidearm, the real one, his hand shaking violently. "You!" he screamed. "You did this. You ruined everything. You're my way out." He grabbed for her to take her hostage. But Val was there. She moved, ignoring the fire in her shoulder, planting herself directly between Sean and Ella. Her body was a solid, unmoving shield. She faced Sean, her eyes filled with a cold, absolute certainty. "Try and touch my person," Val said. Sean hesitated, the gun wavering. Ella stepped up, flush with Val's back, her chin high, her eyes locked on her ex-husband, her look, her stance, her presence. Finished the thought for the entire world to see. "We are each other's person." It was the first time they had said it, and they had said it to everyone. The air in Warehouse 17 crackled, thick with generator fumes, salt spray from the storm, and the raw, kinetic energy of the crowd. Sean's pistol was a black, shaking punctuation mark in the space between him, Val, and Ella. The standoff was sliced open by new headlights, news vans, the Lake Haven Gazette logo, mud-splattered but defiant, was illuminated by the flashing strobes of the MOCD cars finally arriving in their wake. Ava Rios stepped out, no longer an agent but a source, flanked by a cameraman. "A statement," a reporter yelled at the pale Oxley lawyer. "Is IFIB aware of the allegations that Oxley laundered money through the Hope Relief Fund?" The lawyer, trapped between the crowd and the press, regained a sliver of his composure. "The Interstate Financial Integrity Bureau does not comment on active investigations." "That's not a denial," a longshoreman roared from the crowd, and the surge of public anger was like a physical blow. The storm had become their courtroom, and the pier their witness stand. Luka Vacek, seeing his allies crumble and his exit blocked, knew the game was over. He chose to flip the board. He lunged backward, not to escape, but toward a stack of wooden crates stenciled with hazard warnings, emulsion-blasting agents, pier demolition charges. He grabbed a small, blocky remote detonator from a satchel. "Back!" he roared, holding the detonator high. "All of you, back, or I drop this whole pier into the river, evidence and all." Val moved without thought. She launched herself across the concrete, a blur of motion. She ignored the tearing pain in her shoulder, her entire body a weapon aimed at the man's arm. She slammed into Vacek, her good hand clamping down on his wrist, forcing the detonator skyward. They crashed against the crates, a brutal, grunting tangle of limbs. Val's baton was gone. This was pure, desperate leverage. Ella saw the red light on the detonator blink. Vacek's thumb was spasming on the activation button. She ran, her baseball bat raised. She did not swing at Vacek. She swung for the device. It was a batter's precision. All her fear and rage channeled into one perfect, leveling swing. The heavy wood connected with the plastic casing with a sharp, definitive crack. The detonator shattered, its components scattering across the wet floor. The circuit was dead. As all eyes turned to the fight, Sean made his last, desperate move. He grabbed Ella by the arm, yanking her viciously, pulling her in front of him as a human shield. "Let me go!" he screamed at the crowd, his voice a panicked shriek. "Let me go, or I shoot her!" He pressed the barrel of his pistol hard against her temple. Ella didn't struggle. She didn't flinch. She was a single mother who had faced down mercenaries. Her ex-husband was just a coward. "Step, pivot, look," Mags's voice in her head. Sean's grip was iron on her arm. His gun hand was slick with sweat at her temple. Ella dropped her center of gravity, pivoting her hips into him, knocking him off balance. As he stumbled, she didn't try to pull the gun away. She rotated her wrist, a sharp, practice softball snap, catching his gun hand and forcing the barrel upward, away from her head. Simultaneously, she brought the bat up, not as a club, but as a lever. She jammed the heavy wooden end up hard under the trigger guard, snapping the plastic safety switch. The gun was useless. She shoved him hard. He fell backward onto the wet concrete, the inert pistol clattering uselessly to the ground. Across the room, Val had won. She had Wojciech pinned, her knee on his chest, her forearm pressed hard across his throat. Wojciech's eyes bulged, his good hand clawing at her arm. She could end it. One sharp downward thrust, end the Novak threat, end the man who had sliced her, end the man who moved human cargo. Her old dockside law, the law of the lesser evil, demanded it. She saw the sea of phones. She saw Eva Rios's camera. She saw Ella, standing tall, having disarmed Sean, not destroyed him. Val pressed down, just enough to hear the cartilage in Wojciech's throat creak. Then, she relaxed the pressure. She pulled a set of cargo straps from her belt and, with brutal efficiency, bound his hands. She would let Athena and the press do their work. The lesser evil today was letting him live to be tried in the light. Sean didn't try to get up. The fight had drained out of him, replaced by a pathetic whining sound. He knelt on the cold concrete, the storm's rain blowing in, and he wept. "I just wanted her back," he choked, tears cutting clean lines through the grime on his face. I just wanted my kid." Ella looked down at him, her face not angry, but cold with a terrible, clear-eyed pity. "That's not how you get her back. Sean, fatherhood isn't a bargaining chip you cash in when you sell out your city." Her voice was steady, cutting through his sobs. "You get clean. You go to therapy. You prove you are a father, not just a contractor. And then we talk about supervised visits. That's the only path. That's the only one I will ever give you." Eva Rios had filmed the entire exchange. She looked from Ella's strength to Val's restraint, to Sean's collapse. She clicked off her phone and turned to the Gazette reporter, her voice ringing with conviction. "Agent Eva Rios, IFIB," she announced. "I am officially on the record. The Interstate Financial Integrity Bureau was aware of Oxley Meridian's activities and ordered a stand-down to protect market assets over human lives. They are complicit. I am resigning, and I am submitting my full findings to the press." She looked directly at Ella and Val. "I choose to stand with the real people." The crowd parted, the MOCD, finally moving in, began securing the scene, cuffing the Oxley lawyer, the CETG contractors, and the remaining Novak crew. In the center of the warehouse, lit by the harsh red and blue strobes and the white light of dozens of phone cameras, Val walked to Ella. They didn't speak. They just fell into each other. Val's good arm wrapped around Ella's waist, pulling her close, anchoring her. Ella buried her face in the curve of Val's neck, her hands clutching the back of her jacket. They held each other, two pillars in the middle of their own storm. A sound started in the crowd, clapping, a slow, rhythmic applause that spread, the sound of the heavy rain on the tin roof suddenly sounding like fireworks. Oxley Meridian's Lake Haven line was broken. Later, as they were being processed, Val's phone, which an MOCD agent had placed in a plastic tub, buzzed, a single, encrypted text message. "Oxley Lake Haven is a lost asset. The contract, however, is not terminated. We will be in touch. Signed the board." Val showed the screen to Ella. The corporate fight was over. The real one was just beginning. Ella looked at the message, then at Val's steady, tired face. She felt the old, cold dread, the ghost of the hospital corridor, and realized it was gone. This was not the end of the war, but it was the end of her fear. Their love, forged in the diner and hammered out in the storm, had held. "Miss Korolenko," a grim-faced MOCD agent said, clipboard in hand, "we need your statement." Val nodded. She stepped forward, under the harsh processing lights, accepting the scrutiny. "I'll tell you everything," she said, her voice clear. "It started with the relief containers, the SS, hope." She was accepting the light, even knowing how badly it would burn. The storm was over, but the war for Lake Haven had moved indoors. The city town hall was packed, smelling of wet wool and simmering anger. It was a public tribunal, broadcast on a local feed. At the front, a team of lawyers from Oxley Meridian, their suits costing more than the diner's weekly profit, argued for the immediate seizure of the Blue Comet. They claimed it was a public nuisance, a hub of criminal activity, and demanded it as collateral for the damage to the pier. Ava Rios, in a crisp blazer, looking more powerful as a civilian than she ever had as an agent, took the stand. She presented the authentic Athena ledger. This, Your Honor, is the digital proof, a documented conspiracy between Oxley Set G and the Novak crew to manufacture a crisis and seize public assets. The lead Oxley lawyer, a man with a voice like polished glass, stood up. Objection, and I must laugh. This evidence was obtained by a civilian and a disgraced crime boss in violation of every search and seizure protocol. It is fruit of the poisonous tree. Inadmissible. The judge, a weary local man, looked troubled. He was leaning toward, agreeing. Then Ella was called. She walked to the podium, not with a hard drive, but with a stack of crumpled, grease-stained logbooks. You want to talk about admissible evidence? Ella's voice was clear, carrying across the silent room. Lawyers like you think the world runs on digital signatures. This town runs on propane and flour. You want a chain of custody? I have one. She held up a printout. This is from my kitchen's thermal imaging camera, the one I use to check for oven leaks. It shows 11 heat signatures on my roof at 10:03 p.m. On the night of the attack, before any incident was reported. It shows a heat spike from a military-grade flare at 10:05. She slapped down a utility bill. This is my gas meter log. It shows an unscheduled, high-volume pull of 20 cubic feet, corresponding exactly to the moment my grill line was cut. Here's my electrical log, showing the surge that blew my sign when the bullet hit it. A few titters of laughter started in the back. The lawyer smirked. This is a joke, the lawyer said. Is it? Ella leaned into the microphone. My records are kept every single hour. If my walk-in freezer temperature is off by 2 degrees, I lose $10,000 in product. I promise you, my logs are more accurate than any of your shell company's books. The laughter died. The judge stared at the meticulous, mundane, and utterly unbreakable timeline. While the hearing was crippling Oxley's legal team, the pier was still a chaotic MOCD crime scene. Ella had stepped outside the hall for a breath of clean, cold air. Val at her side, a man in hospital scrubs, unseen in the chaos, slipped through the police line and approached Ella, his hand deep in his pocket. Miss Perez. Val saw the gesture, saw the deadness in his eyes, a bored assassin. Before she could react, a different shape slammed into the man. It was Sean Dwyer, his arm in a sling. He had been released pending the hearing. He tackled the assassin, not at Ella, but away from her. The assassin's hand came free, a short, thin blade in his fist. He plunged it, once, into Sean's stomach. Sean cried out, a sharp, wet sound, and collapsed. The assassin scrambled up, saw Val's eyes on him, and fled, disappearing into the crowd. Ella rushed to Sean, her hands hovering, useless. Val was already there. Ripping open Sean's shirt, her own coat pressed hard against the bleeding wound. He went for you! Elle! Sean gasped, his face clammy and white. I saw him. Val looked up, her face a mask of cold fury, not at Sean, but at the world. Medic, she roared at a stunned MOCD agent. Get a bus. Now this man is a witness. The news of Sean's sacrifice, of the board's attempt on Ella's life in broad daylight, was the final straw. The judge brought his gavel down. Given the extraordinary circumstances and the clear and present danger to the citizens of this town, this court is invoking the public interest exception. The Athena ledger is admitted. Warrants are issued for every Oxley branch in this state. The River County Special Enforcement Task Group is, as of this moment, permanently dissolved. The hall exploded. Later. Val stood on those same town hall steps, facing the cameras. She took a deep breath. For 10 years, she said, her voice carrying, I've kept this port safe using dockside law. I kept the lesser evil at bay because I thought it was the only way. I was wrong. She looked at the crowd. The light you all brought is better. The Ardenti Syndicate is done. Today, we are forming the Lake Haven Port Security Cooperative. We will be licensed. We will be supervised by MOCD, and we will be owned by our workers. She looked straight into the main camera. We will protect this port, but if you see me stumble, if you see me slip back into the shadows, you pull me back up. Don't ever let the suits pull us down again. The town began to rebuild. Ella, using the $20,000 from Val's safe, didn't pay her debts. She opened the Blue Comet Relief Fund for the dock workers' families whose medical supplies had been destroyed. June, safe and sound, drew the logo a small, smiling blue comet, trailing stars wrapped around a red heart. The sticker went up in every window in town. One last volley came. A messenger delivered a certified offer from the board, offering a staggering 8-figure sum to buy the Blue Comet and its land. Ella, in front of a local reporter, tore the check in half. "We don't sell Lake Haven's breakfast," she said, and went back to wiping down the counter. That night, for the first time, there was peace. The diner was closed. The "Sorry, we're closed" sign turned to the world. Inside, the lights were off, save for a single candle flickering on the corner booth table. Val sat on the vinyl seat, her shoulder stitched, her body aching, but her face calm. Ella sat beside her, her hands gently massaging the tension from Val's good shoulder, her thumbs working the knots from her neck. Val let out a long, slow breath she felt she'd been holding for a decade, leaning her head back against Ella's collarbone. "You saved me, Ella," she whispered, her voice rough with exhaustion. "All of them. You saved me." Ella's hands stilled. Val turned, her body angled toward Ella in the booth's small, intimate space. She raised a hand, her calloused fingers brushing Ella's cheek, a touch of almost unbearable tenderness. Ella leaned into it, her eyes closing. They kissed. It was not the desperate, rain-soaked kiss of the kitchen. This was slow and sure and deep. It was a kiss of promise, of survival, of arrival. It was quiet, and it was everything. Val's hand tangled in her hair. Ella's hand came up to rest on Val's heart. They pulled apart, resting their foreheads together, just breathing in the candlelit dark. The peace was real, but the war wasn't over. As they were cleaning up, Ella's phone buzzed. A final text from Ava. "Athena's core code is decrypted. It's a shell. Ella, the board is just a post office box in Delaware. It all traces back to a single, encrypted international account linked to Novak's Central Command. We didn't cut the head off the snake. We just cut off a claw. But Lake Haven was safe. Tonight, it was safe." Val locked the front door of the Blue Comet. She drove Ella and June, not to the diner, but to a new, clean apartment on the high bank of the river, with a new lock and a view of the water. As Ella tucked June into her new bed, Val stood by the front door. She hung a small hook on the wall. Carefully. She hung the cracked, paint-chipped baseball bat on it. Underneath, she placed a small, silver frame. It was a photo Mags had taken at the pier after the hearing. Val, Ella, and June, squinting together in the bright, hard-won sunlight. The weapon was now a relic, a guardian, a promise. Thank you for listening to our story. We're so curious. Where are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.